Okay. There we go. All right. Good evening. I see Yolanda is with me this evening. It's a couple minutes after 7, so I'll go ahead and get started. As always, I'm Dale Lamb with Gardner Webb. This is Mel 605. You've made it to nearly to the top of the hill to complete your coursework and hopefully your portfolios this summer. And so I'll kick it off tonight by reminding you that when you go to Blackboard and click on Mel 605, you have an enrollment verification activity that you need to go ahead and complete as soon as possible. It will be on our main page. Right here it is. Summer 2017 Gardner Webb enrollment verification activity required for each online course. Just click on that link and go ahead and do your enrollment verification. I'll remind you of that again next week. There's my name and all my numbers, my emails for you to get in touch with me. I did an introduction video. Get you started if you want to go back and watch that. But here are kind of the things that are important. You're enrolled in the online section, as you know, because you've been with me before in 603, that I do a weekly session. It's optional. You can join me if you want to. You can watch the video, or you can simply go to the main menu of our course and click on the sessions for that week and see what we did. You can read the materials yourself. I will send you a link each week after the session so you can watch the YouTube video, and I will also post that link under that week's session. So you can go back and click on that if you can't find it. Here are the dates of the sessions tonight, next week, 4 days in June, 3 days in July. We won't have a class the week of July 4th. And then August sessions. Remember, these are optional. There are your required text, and they are required. You're going to have reading in them every week. And here are the deadlines. And the first thing is if you're not caught up with all your evidence artifact work, you need to talk to your coach immediately and make a plan to get caught up. Hopefully, all you lack this summer, if that, is Cap E and PSYOP F, and then the final Cap and the final PSYOP to be put into task stream. Also, you will need to put those in the assignment Dropbox. I will need for you to put them in there because they're required for this course, and they're the drop boxes for them. So if you've already done them, put them in task stream, that's great. Go ahead and drop them in here for me, because that's how you get your grade this semester, or part of your grade is making sure that you have those 4 things completed as required in the course catalog. Now, I've had a couple of questions about peer reviews. If you have already submitted your work to task stream, the things that are due this semester, these 4 items, you don't have to go back and peer review, and I don't need to see a copy of your peer review. If you have not and you need to do peer review, I believe I have put a place on discussion board, and let's double check me. I've put a place on discussion board where you can upload those. Okay, there's the bottom of page 1. Page 2, on page 2 of discussion board, we should find a place. Yeah, there they are. So if you still need peer review, put them in there. And folks, if you've been peer reviewing work for folks and they put it in here, go ahead and peer review it for them. Again, if your evidence artifact work has already been submitted to task stream, you don't have to submit it for peer review. You just have to put it in assignment Dropbox. If you have somebody in your group that you've been working with whose work has not been peer reviewed, they will put it here in discussion board for peer review, and you will peer review it for them. So you don't have to upload yours, but you do need to continue to help your classmates peer review theirs. I will check on that regularly to make sure that those things are being peer reviewed. I won't assign any new teams this semester, but if you see somebody's work in there that has been that you've been working with, or they'll probably email you and tell you, go ahead and join them for a peer review. So remember, assignment Dropbox. These are the 4 required evidence artifacts assignment for the semester. You must put them in there whether you've already submitted them or not. You do not have to put work that has been submitted to TaskStream for peer review, but you do have to help your classmates if their work has not been peer reviewed. And that's done in discussion board. All right, let's look at the weekly schedule and see where we are on that. So what I have for you is what you're to do each week. So this week's topic were leadership versus management, supervision, motivation, and behavior. And so you had some chapters to read in Hershey and Glickman, and then you had discussion boards. Now, I've got it in yellow, and I'm going to say it again. You pick one per week. You're only required to do one of the 3, but you get to pick which one you want to do each week. If you like Hershey, then you do that one. If you like Glickman, do that one, but find your own path. But you only have to do one discussion board each week. That goes all the way through. I hope some of you will choose the AP interview for week 3. But again, if you choose to do one of the others, that's fine. I always enjoy reading those AP interviews. And the reason why I have you do that AP interview is usually that's pretty good insight into what you can expect when you get your job. It also helps to sometimes when you interview for a job, if you have interviewed that AP, it's good information to have, but that's up to you. But now the last week, there's only one choice in the last week, and that's you will do the discussion board on the Strength Finder book by Conchi and Rath. That's the only one that's due that week, and then there is a final reflection. That's optional. That's underneath where it says syllabus. You can find that final reflection if you want to do that for me. But here are your weekly assignments. The reading, you must do all the reading. But again, you get to pick one of the discussion boards each week. Okay, so those are your weekly assignments. Let's go over here and look at syllabus. And my screen sharing is paused. Resume share. New share desktop, share screen. All right, so if you click on syllabus, there's the syllabus in here for this summer. There's the peer review. Hey Amanda, there's a peer review for if you need the form, if you can't find one, I've got one stuck there for you. If you do choose to do the assistant principal interview, I've got an interview protocol here for you. You don't have to follow it exactly, but it's kind of some things that you should be asking. And then I've got that final reflection that you can do there for me if you'd like to do that. But again, that's optional. Again, the administrative interview is optional for the week of June 3rd or 4th. If you would like to do it, you can look at that protocol. Final reflection is optional. Peer review, you only have to do those if you've got somebody in your group that still needs their work peer reviewed. Amanda just joined us, and I know that she already has all of her work completed, so she won't have to put anything in discussion board. She'll just have to drop those 4 things in assignment Dropbox, because that's how we get our grades. But if she has somebody in her group that needs her help, they can drop their work in assignment Dropbox, and she can help them by doing a peer review for them. So I don't want you to, the point here is I don't need to see the peer reviews that have done in the past. I don't want you to, go back and plow ground that and things you've already done one time. You don't have to do them again. We're moving forward. We've got a lot of good content this summer. And so I want to make sure that you focus on your content this summer. We're going to do a lot of things that are going to help you not only get a job, but do that job well once you get it. I've got some things, for the different kinds of interviews that you're going to be facing. And so I've got a lot of good materials this summer that I'm gonna go through. As always, under intern materials, I've got the handbook, the packet for your site supervisor, your suggested list of activities, your suggested timeline. I've got the cheat sheet on open-ended competencies if you haven't completed your competency folio, and we're going to go over task stream next. And I've got your cheat sheet for where you can find competency proofs in your evidence artifacts. I've got the video on how to create a competency folio if you have not already created your competency folio. Then I've got a video on how to upload it for evaluation once you have all 21 of your competencies in there. So that's a good segue for me into task stream. Please remember that you have to establish a competency folio and put 21 proofs in there from communication down through visionary. If I can get task stream to open up for me here. Okay, it's going to take a second. No, I'll submit later. I was under a student view here. All right, so here we go. All right, so you're going to have a competency folder that looks like this. And if you don't have one loaded, there's a video there under intern materials on how to load this thing so that you can drop work in it. And so you got to go communication down through visionary. You do not have to do professional dispositions, digital learning competencies, or narrative. And you only have to do one. It says here you have to do 3. You only have to do 1. And you can choose between evidence artifact 1, which is the app cell, the SIP, or open-ended. Those are your options. And it tells you what your options are. And you say, well, what is a proof of competency? Well, again, I have those under intern materials. I have them listed where you will find them in your evidence artifact work. And I also have them listed where you will find them from your internship activities. That's open-ended. So let's look at those 2 documents if I can pull them up right quick. Let's see if that's going to open up for me. There it comes. Let's see if these will open for me. They're trying to open. There they go. It's taking a second to load. Slow. Here we go. All right. So on your screen, this is your cheat sheet. If it says that you need to load a communication competency, which is competency number 1, there's a list of them down here. I have them numbered. So communication is number 1. So you're looking for a communication competency from the app cell. Right here they are. Email permission from your principal, a screenshot of that would be fine. A PLC agenda, PLC minutes, pictures of a PLC meeting. I have it already mapped out for you where you will find your competencies in all of the 6 evidence artifacts, and there they are. So it's just plug and play. This shouldn't take you more than an hour. All right. From your activities, these are open-ended. If you address a large or small group of adults, that would be a communication competency. If you've got a flyer or a video or a picture, just any of those kinds of things will do as proof that you did that. Okay. So going back here, communication, you just upload one of those proofs in here. It can be, again, from the app cell, the SIP, or open-ended. And remember, you only have to do 1. Now, here's the trick, as here's the problem that we've been having. Make sure you select the proper button up here to upload the type of media that you're trying to upload. If you have an MP4 video, use the video button. If you have a link to YouTube, use the link button. If you have a Word document, use attachment. If you have a PowerPoint, use slideshow. And if you have a PDF form, a picture, or a screenshot, use text and image. Okay? Make sure you use the appropriate one for the type of media. Now, make sure that you don't use the attachment button on a Word document that has a picture in it. If you do, you'll get an error statement that says you're exceeding your character limit. If you have a Word document with a picture in it, use text and image to upload that one. If your Word documents do not have pictures, use the attachment button. That's really the only thing. And once you get this done, once you get all 21 of these complete and you've requested comments from your coach and your coach says they're all good, you switch back over to your DRF portfolio for spring 16, and it has a place down here at the bottom where you can now upload that folio right here, final competency folio. You click on it, follow the directions, and upload that folio. You see I've got mine there, and then you just submit your work, and it's pass-fail, and you're good to go. If you need more information on that, don't hesitate to email me. But you've got to do your competency folio. You've got to finish your evidence artifact work, and let's look at what's due here. You know your 6 evidence artifacts are due in your folder. Your internship log, just upload one that has 80 hours on it and submit it. It's pass-fail. You just have to have one log with 80 hours. Your folio, I just went over that on what to upload there. Licensure evaluation is done by Dr. Neal at the end, so don't worry about that. Competency, as you know, is done by your principal and by your coach separately. If your principal does not have their username and password for TaskStream, email me. I will send not only that username and password, I'll send them directions on how to use it. But you need to go ahead and do that now. Go ahead and get them to do your competency now. If you haven't done it, you need to do all 6 of these dispositions now and submit them. And your coach will do the other half of them. So all 6 dispositions are due now, and you need to get your site supervisor to do all 3 of his. Again, if your site supervisor does not have the username and password to do site supervisor dispositions and certification of competency, let me know, and I will get them that information. All right, so that's TaskStream. We want to get these knocked out as quickly as we can this summer. We want them to be done. I'm gonna log out of this. If not, this is what's slowing everything down. There it comes. Okay. Excellent. All right, I'm out of that now. All right, I'm back to you. Okay. So again, intern materials is where you will find how to create your folio, how to upload your folio once it's done, where you will find your cheat sheet on where to find your competencies, all those things in the handbook that you're under in your site supervisor packet. All those things are under intern materials. As always, under TaskStream tools, I have examples of evidence artifacts. I have old copies of my notes that y'all are still under, how to write your summaries and descriptors for your final submissions. You know that when you do the final submission of each of the 6 evidence artifacts, you have to write a summary and descriptors that go along with those. Here are the guides for doing that. So those can be found under TaskStream tools. So that's pretty much it. You've got your weekly schedule. You know which discussion board is due, which 3 you get to pick from every week. You know what your reading is. You've got your intern materials on competency folio. You've got your tools, your TaskStream in order to build your 6 evidence artifacts. Assignment Dropbox to drop the 4 things that are due in terms of evidence artifacts This summer discussion board is where you go get your weekly discussion board. Again, you get to pick one of 3. It's also where you can do peer review if you still have work outstanding. Then each of the 10 sessions that we're going to have, I have here. Zoom session 1 is tonight. I have things under that I cover every week. And so again, I will come back here and I will post the video here and I will email it to you at the end of each session, but I'll also post it here. So I have reviewed all Blackboard functions. I have reviewed task string functions. And so now I am going to, I've got to load one more document here that I closed inadvertently a minute ago. And we're going to go ahead and get started with tonight's content. All right. As soon as this opens. All right. While I'm paused here, Amanda?
Yes, sir.
Was any of that clear, or anybody have any questions?
I think you did good.
All right. All right. Well, I'll just keep rolling then if there are no questions. All right. Let me start out with.
Yes, it is. All
right. Let me go back to Zoom session 1. All right. The history of leadership. Tonight's about leadership and management. That's one of our themes for the night. Let me open this one up and kind of give you a brief overview of the history of leadership. The first work that was done in leadership started out in traits theory. You can go back and read most of this stuff, and a lot of this stuff is contained in some of the reading that you'll do for this course, but I'm going to kind of go over this. Traits theory meant that you were born with certain, or some people were born with certain physical traits that made them leaders. And if you didn't have those traits, you couldn't be a leader. Those traits initially were being male, being Caucasian, being tall, those kinds of physical traits that you couldn't be a leader unless you were those things. Well, we quickly moved on and said, no, that's not true. Then we went to the great man theory, that there was, that you couldn't learn leadership, that you could only be born to be a great leader. It was the great men, and we quickly figured out that wasn't true either. And then earlier in the 20th century, a man named Kurt Lewin introduced some leadership styles. And we'll be doing Lewin's inventory a little bit later this semester, where he characterized leadership styles as authoritative, delegative, or participative. And we'll do a little inventory later to find out what your natural style is. And what Lewin said is you had a proclivity, or you tended toward one of these 3 styles. And then Redden and some people like that came along from out of Ohio State in the 60s, the 1960s. Lewin's work was in the 30s. Redden and his group in Ohio State in the 60s said, no. They started with contingency theories. They said, your leadership style depends upon the situation. That good leaders could be fluid through all 3 of those styles. That you might have one that was your particular bent, or your particular favorite, or what you naturally gravitated toward, but that good leaders could switch styles according to the situation, which led rise to Hershey and Blanchard, and you're going to do a good bit of reading in Hershey this semester, which said, okay, we're going to take all these things and put them together and come up with situational leadership. And basically what situational leadership is it's an extension of contingency theory that says, yes, we switch styles, but we switch styles based on task and relationship behaviors, according to the maturity or the readiness of the followers. That there's a relationship there, that if you have, say, beginning teachers, you have to be more they don't know what to do. You have to be more task oriented with them. And older teachers, you can be more relationship oriented with them because they know what to do. Well, that started back in the 80s and was the primary leadership theory until around 2000, when we began to realize that maybe that wasn't exactly right. And so we then went to transformational leadership. And transformational leadership, if I can get it to be still on the screen. And it won't. Let me see. I'll have to do this. Well, let me see if I can get it. I'll have to reload it. It doesn't want to be still tonight. Let's see if I reload it, we'll be able to read it. There we go. So about 2000, we came up with transformational leadership. Transformational leadership is just an extension of situational leadership. It is not in conflict with it. But what transformational leadership says is that transformational leaders who inspire and motivate, again, let me say that again, transformational leaders who inspire and motivate understand that they have to use a style of high task and high relationship for everybody. That you have high expectations, you know, that in terms of task, and you have to build relationships with everybody, regardless of their maturity level. You have to find people who are willing and able, and it's your job to make them successful. No more the days of just hiring people, sending them down the room and let them fend for themselves, like throwing them in the deep end of the pool. It's now your job, once you get the right people, to make them, once you find people who are willing, it's your job to make them able. Servant leadership. That you have to be a part of their development. Your job, your primary responsibility with anybody that you hire or anybody that you lead is to make them successful. And that led rise to books like Good to Great by Jim Collins, in terms of how to take these people and make them great. And supposedly there are 21 characteristics of a transformational leader, and that material is contained in some other of the files that we'll go over tonight. So that's kind of an overview of history, or history of leadership. It went from traits to great man to Lewin, to contingency theory with Redden, Ohio State, situational leadership with Hershey and Blanchard, and we're now in transformational leadership. And so if we look at Good to Great, this is Dale's notes on Good to Great by Jim Collins. We'll go over the slideshow in just a minute, but here's kind of what I've boiled transformational leadership down to in terms of how to go about getting good and achieving great. Start with the end in mind, give explicit instructions on what you want, model desired behaviors. Again, a servant leader, show examples of what you're looking for, monitor and give feedback often, be positive, recognize people. And what that means is answer their emails, speak to them in the hallway, take their phone calls, people that you work with, and then reward them with with the grades and scores and the evaluations that they deserve. Don't be one of those idiots that thinks if it's a 6-point scale, you shouldn't give above 4 because that keeps people working harder. No, that discourages people. If people are a 6 on a scale of 1 to 6, then you give them 6s. That old thought, well, I don't want to give you too high scores because I need for you to know that there's still room to grow and keep you hungry. No, that's the old idiotic way of leadership in years past. That's the old contingency theory stuff from the 60s. Modern leaders understand that you reward people who perform. You don't just say, well, it's a 6-point scale and I'm not giving anything above a 4. I have a story to tell about that. I learned that lesson early in my career before I ever even heard about any of these leadership theories. When I was a young teacher in a high school, and I was in the science department, and we got a new principal who wasn't very smart. Imagine that. And the outgoing principal had hired a lady for the science department who was near the end of her career, but she wanted to come back to her hometown and kind of finish out her career there. She had her time in, but she wanted to work a few more years and spend time with her elderly parents. And she was maybe mid-50s at the time, but she had her time in. She had her 30 in, but so he hired her. Well, over the summer, the principal changed. We got a new principal. He wasn't very smart. He didn't last very long because of things like this. At the end of the year, when we got our evaluations, I was neophyte teacher. I'd been teaching, I don't know, for 2 or 3 or 4 years. And we were on the old 6-point scale and I got straight 4s. Well, that was fine, man. I was a young teacher. I was doing the best I could. And he gave her straight 4s as well. And when she asked him why, he gave her straight 4s. He said, well, everybody's got room for improvement. I want you to continue. I don't want you to think that you're the best, or, I want you to keep working hard. And so she retired on the spot, which, was kind of idiotic on his part to do that to her. She was, obviously better than straight 4s on a scale of 6. Having said that, you say, but Dale, maybe she just deserved 4s. Well, the only thing is she was at that time she was the reigning science teacher of the year in the United States of America, who had just come off a 1-year sabbatical where she had been allowed to travel all over the country and all over the world as the national science teacher of the year. Not the national science teacher of the year. And this idiot gave her 4 out of 6s on her evaluations, and she promptly retired. I've carried that lesson with me now for 40-something years. For about 40 years, I've carried that lesson with me of what a poor leader he was. He didn't last long as a high school principal because he was an old 1960s principal, and even in the 70s and 80s, that stuff was outdated. And he ran her off almost immediately. And so that reward down there at the bottom, that's very important. So again, start with the end in mind, give explicit instructions, model desired behavior, show examples, monitor, give feedback often, be positive, recognize, and reward. I try to model all of these behaviors myself. If you notice, I've got examples under task stream tools. I give you feedback on your discussion board daily. I take your calls and your emails. We've been through this, this is our second go round. So that I'm not even the best teacher that you've ever had by a long shot, but I try to model these things for a reason. And the reason I try to model these things is I want you to learn to model them once you get your job. All right. So equal parts task and relationship behaviors. So what are task and relationship behaviors that you're supposed to model with your followers? And here are the definitions of those, but here's what's really important. I kind of summarized them for you here. Task-oriented behaviors are emphasis on work facilitation, focus on structures, roles, and tasks. Produce desired results is a priority. Emphasis is on goal setting and a clear plan to achieve the goals. Strict use of schedule and step-by-step plans, and a punishment incentive system. Now, you got to have those things, but they've got to be balanced with emphasis on interaction facilitation. Focus on relationships, well-being, and motivation. Foster positive relationships is a priority. Emphasis on team members and communication within those teams. Communication facilitation, casual interaction, and frequent team meetings. These two have to be put together, folks. If you're just on one side of the scale or the other, if you're all relationship and no task, nothing ever gets done. If you're all task and no relationship, plenty of stuff gets done, but you drive everybody off. They leave you, just like I was, as I said, I worked for the last principal I worked for right before I became the administrator was the fellow that didn't last very long, and he was only task oriented, and he did not reward and recognize people. He felt like that it was their job to do that, and so why should he reward or recognize the good job that they were doing? He had no relationship skills at all. So he drove good people away. The national reigning science teacher of the year, he drove her into retirement, and he didn't last much longer than her. He was out, before the next year was over, he was out because number one, he was an idiot, but number two, he didn't understand that school is a people business. We don't produce widgets or chairs or furniture or a inanimate object product. We work with people. And he did not have any relationship orientation at all. I learned those things through my career, and I always go back to him as the example of, he was only a task-oriented person. And now I have worked with, thankfully never worked for, but I have worked with people who were only relationship-oriented, and nothing ever got done except meetings. I've probably told you before, I've been married for over 30 years to a curriculum specialist. I don't like curriculum specialists. I like her, but I don't, in general, like curriculum specialists because I find them to be too relationship oriented. They want to have another meeting. They want to know how everybody feels. Nothing hardly ever gets done. That's a generalization, and if you're a curriculum person, I apologize, but you understand what I'm talking about. You can't just always be about relationships and feelings and having another meeting, and there must be something that you're meeting about. Work has to get done. So it's just as bad to be on either end of that scale. A transformational leader puts those two together, and that's the idea, and that's what we're going to try to teach you this semester, is how to put those two together. You'll do a lot of inventories, a lot of assessments. You'll take a lot of those kinds of things to try to find out where you are and where you need to be on these scales. All right, I have a PowerPoint for you tonight, and it's on Jim Collins' Good to Great in the Social Sector, and I'm not going to go through all of it. This is if you haven't read the book, you need to, but if you want the cheat sheet if you want the Cliff's Notes, I have that for you here. So I have that. And so I have a good one under tonight for you. All right, let me go back to Zoom session 1 here. I've got a couple of PDFs that I want to briefly introduce. I'm keeping an eye on our time. I've got a link here to the 8 classic leadership theories. I summarized those for you earlier. If you want to go back and look at this link, I don't know if it'll open up for me tonight through Blackboard or not, but let's see right here. And so what I summarized for you on the history of leadership are these 8 theories here. If you want to know more about the 8 traditional leadership theories, I do have a link here for you where you can do more. You can do more research on those or learn more about them in terms of the history of leadership. And so there it is. If you want to go back and spend some time with it. Okay. Good to great. The social sectors is that PowerPoint that I just showed you. Task and relationship behaviors. If you want to know more about transformational leadership, transformational leaders inspire and motivate. I have I believe this is a PDF. Okay. There it comes. Always works well, but when I'm loading it before class, it never works well in class. None of these things actually work well with Zoom, I'm afraid. Let's see if it'll open. But I have what I consider to be the best. Here it comes. The best work that I have seen that explains transformational leadership. And this is a journal article. But if you have never heard of transformational leadership, this is about transformational leadership in terms of principles. It's not a generic one that just speaks to it. It speaks to principles, being a transformational principle. And it's a very good one. It's not that long, but it is a scholarly article. But it's not hard to read if you want to read more about being transformational leadership in the setting of a principle. I have that document here for you if you're interested in that. Transformational leadership helps school principals frame their attitudes and move their schools forward. It has 4 major characteristics. And so it's pretty much a how-to for principals in transformational leadership. I find it to be the seminal work in that area. I haven't found a better one than that explains it. I have a doctoral student right now who is doing his dissertation in transformational leadership, and we're pretty much following that article in terms of what he's doing. I heard from him today. And then the last 2 things I want to cover with you tonight is the 21st Century Skills Framework and how that factors into transformational leadership is especially that communication piece, but all the things that we want our students to know in terms of being 21st century learners, we have to factor that in terms of being 21st century leaders. We almost have to look at our followers as we would look at students, and we have to kind of apply that same theory to them. Learning and innovation skills, core subjects, 21st century themes, information media, technology skills, life and career skills, standards and assessments. The whole notion here is you need to be a 21st century leader, not just try to get your students to learn 21st century skills, but deal with your teachers through the framework of 21st century. You know, maybe you can meet virtually for a PLC, you know, use information media technology. But, you know, there's a lot of things that you can do 21st century wise as a leader. Not only for your students to have these skills, but also for teachers to work with them in the 21st century mode. So again, for teachers, the upper part is supposed to be for students, and then the bottom part is for working with teachers, standards and assessments, curriculum and instruction, professional development and learning environments. But here are the student outcomes. Information, but you need to look at your teachers as students as well and make sure that you're doing these same things with them, using this same framework in terms of how you interact or what you want your teachers to know. It's the same thing you want your students to know, and you don't assume that they already know it. So here are your 21st century things, and look at these things not so much as is what kids are going to learn, but these are the things that teachers need to learn. And this is the way that you need to deal with them. So you need to review your framework for 21st century learning. And that learning is, again, for students and teachers, for you as a leader, because remember, you don't teach students, you teach teachers. Your job, again, going back to that Collins, willing and able, your job is to find people who are willing and then make them able through the work that you do with them, through your leadership, through servant leadership, you teaching them. But you need to teach them in a 21st century context as well. You can't teach them like we did last century. You got to work and teach and coach them in this methodology. So that's why I've got 21st century skills framework. I see a lot of principals who do a lot of work with teachers, but they do it old school. They don't do it in a modern context, and that's not helpful. That's not helpful to teachers. You need to teach them in the same context that you expect them to teach their students. And then the last thing that I have for you tonight that you must always keep in mind as the leader of an organization is start with the end in mind. That was the first thing that we talked about. Good to great, transformational leaders do. They start with the end in mind. So what is the end that you're looking for as a leader? What is the end that you're looking for? Well, that's real simple. In the state of North Carolina, it has been defined for you what your outcome is supposed to be. So you start with the end in mind. So we start with future ready students because that's what we want. And we work back from that. That is North Carolina's vision of if you lead teachers in 21st century skills and you teach students 21st century skills, and they in turn, you lead teachers by using 21st century skills, and teachers in turn teach students using 21st century methodology and skills, you will come up with future ready students. So this is the end. So this is the end that you're supposed to keep in mind. This is what it looks like right here. The State Board of Education of North Carolina has published what they expect the end to be. This is what you're supposed to start with. The guiding mission of the North Carolina State Board of Education is that every public school student will graduate from high school globally competitive for work and post-secondary education and prepared for life in the 21st century. And it speaks to specifically to everything that we want that child to be. And here it is. It's called Future Ready Student. It's a one-sheeter. But we can't expect to produce these 21st century skills students if we don't lead teachers using 21st century methodology. That's kind of the central theme and the big thought that I want to leave with you tonight is you can't use last century, 20th century techniques to lead teachers and expect them to in turn produce students who have 21st century skills. That just can't happen. That's too big of a disconnect. You must lead your teachers using 21st century skills. Task orientation, equal amount of relationship orientation, using technology, communication, all of those things, staff development that's custom tailored, all the things that we know to do as leaders. You must seek to do that with your followers if in turn you want them to produce 21st century learners and students who have 21st century competencies. So here they are. So again, I ended with this. This is the beginning. We start with this in mind and we work back from this because this is what we want in the end. So I have very quickly gone over giving you an overview of kind of the history of leadership. I have provide you a link where you can do more study on those 8 leadership theories. I've led you hopefully three traits and great man, contingency, situational to transformational. I have provided you a scholarly article on transformational that summarizes what transformational is. I have given you a PowerPoint on good to great, which is the seminal work on how to lead teachers or lead your followers in a transformational context as a servant leader. I have shown you what the 21st century skills that we expect teachers to pass along or to develop in students, and I've given you what that student is supposed to look like in the end, and reminded you that you must be a 21st century executive leader in order for your teachers to produce 21st century students or learners. And so that was my goal tonight. If you have questions about any of the things that I've covered tonight, please don't hesitate to call or email me. Hopefully all of you are at least caught up with your task stream portfolios. If you have work that you need peer reviewed, other than what's due this semester, I have a place in your internship shell. So if you go back to Blackboard, let me see if I can get there. You know that on your home page for Blackboard, before you come into the course, the place where you've got your courses, you've got an executive leadership internship shell. If you go to that shell, if you don't have one, email me and I'll have you one added. But you should have an internship shell. It'll say executive internship or 697. If you go to Legacy 605 semester 5, if you click on that tab, because that's where you are, you will see that there's a place there where you can, I've got it in our course, but you can also come here. If maybe somebody you want to review your work is not in the course, and it can be put here and they can find it. But I've also got a place right here where you can post work that was due in previous semesters, optional clinical coach review, and you can put work in there and get review on it. We won't do peer review on it, but we'll get your coach to look at it. Say, for example, you didn't have CAP Part D done. It was due in a previous semester. You can go there and put it in and get a review from your coach. I don't know that we can get peer reviews on work from prior semesters. That's asking too much of your classmates, but we can get it reviewed by your coach so that you can go ahead and submit it. So again, if you have work that was due in previous semesters, you can go back here, you can come here to where it says Legacy Mels 605 semester 5. That's us. Optional clinical coach review. You can put something in there for your clinical coach to review that. And that will give you an opportunity to get work done. Let me check my emails that are coming in and see if I've got any questions that have come in. I've got a couple here I can answer later. All right. Clear. Okay. All right. Anything else for the good of the group tonight? All right. I thank all of you who joined me tonight. Amanda?
Yes, sir.
Yolanda? How are things going for you job-wise? Everything good so far?
Yes, it's going a little bit rough with third grade and read to achieve and all that mess, EOGs
Yeah,
and everything, but it's going.
Good. Glad to hear it. Amanda, what about you? You about to change jobs?
Things are looking good, yes. I find out June 14th, but it's pretty much I think it's a go.
Good.
Yeah, I'm getting excited.
You should be.
I am.
You should be. That's great. I'm so proud.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thanks, sir.
All right. If nothing else for the good of the group, I will see y'all next week. Everybody, don't hesitate to call or email. I'm always available, and I'll see y'all all next week.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. You too. Thanks.